Oh, okay. So it's southeast. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, Hamilton is closer. And so New York or Philadelphia. I mean, did those? Do you go to those places very often? Or?
New York, never. Philadelphia, because there was a relative that lived there, and Mom would go to take care of her.
Okay. So Philly once in a while. So we know you had a car, but we don't know what year it was. But it had running boards, because that's one of my questions on here. What kind of socializing did your parents do? Where did they go out when they wanted to have a good time, or what did
They
they
had
do?
loads of friends,
Mhm.
so it was from one person's house to another.
So you went to people's houses.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So house parties or stopping by. Um, and what kind of organization did your parents or family belong to? I mean, you went to a Methodist church. Were there any other organizations or social groups or anything like that that you can remember?
Not that I remember.
No.
My dad was a Mason, but he wasn't. He didn't go to every Mason affair there was. I say he was a Mason, but he wasn't like my grandfather, who was a big. Don't ask me what the names are, but someplace in one of the crazy newspapers is a picture of him.
I have it.
You got it? Of my grandfather?
Yeah.
You got the picture?
Yeah, right here. What's
Oh, the sheriff, what's her name, wrote a long time ago.
Yeah, she wrote some really nice articles here. Let's you can hold it up. You can get it in the picture there. And
Yeah.
And there he is.
That's my granddad.
Yeah.
And he was a head honcho of some kind in the, that's his Masonic outfit. But don't ask me what it is.
So that's Pop Lewis.
That's Pop Lewis.
Yeah, I read that.
That's my granddad.
That's great. It's great to have it. I read the article, and it is a great article.
She did a very good article.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It really was nice. Do you remember your first job outside the home as a teenager, working outside of the house? Do you remember what it was, or?
Oh, we were no longer in Kingston at that time.
Oh, okay.
Because we moved away when I was in 7th grade.
Okay.
And my first job was probably acting as a tutor to kids.
Oh, so you tutored?
And then helping, tutoring other high school kids,
Mm-hmm.
helping them with their homework and what have you. And
so you were a good student to be a tutor?
Yeah, I was a good student. I wound up being valedictorian of my high school class.
Wow. That's something.
But then that's a long story too. They didn't. Now, how can I say this? This was a very prejudiced time.
Uh-huh.
I graduated in 1949. At that time, girls were supposed to be stupid. Black girls were doubly supposed to be stupid. So they couldn't accept the fact that I was black, I was female, and I was first. And they also couldn't accept that the two people next to me were also girls. So they never named a valedictorian for that class. They gave the top 10 students the role of giving the valedictorian speech.
But you were included in that?
I was included.
Oh, okay.
Listen, if I hadn't been, Mom would have raised hell.
Wow.
And that's another long story.
Wow, no, that's very interesting. And so that's 1949, you say. So, yeah, that's
another, because my mother and I had a reputation at the high school. Back at that time, traditionally, the high school senior class always went to Washington, D.C., and at that time, Washington, D.C. was a very segregated place. Well, they told me I couldn't go because what are we going to do with her? You know, we can't put her up in the hotel with everybody else. So my mother said, either she goes or nobody goes. So then they accused Mom of being a communist. which she wasn't. And you're being led astray by that horrible organization, the NAACP, which she wasn't. She just said, if the class is going to Washington, D.C., Betty is going to Washington, D.C. So then I looked very helpless and put on my helpless look and said, I've never been to Washington, D.C. I had been, but they didn't have to know that.
Right, right.
And so the school had to find, accommodation for me. And Mom said, and not in some flea-bitten something another. So they arranged to put me up at Howard University. But Mom says, you're not sending her there by herself. She needs a chaperone. Well, don't you want to go with her, Mrs.? No, that's not my job. That's your job.
I had to ask your mother's name, though.
Willie Ann Lewis.
What was it?
Willie Ann.
Willie Ann, okay.
Okay. Then the school board was having a fit because at that time they did not have a black teacher in Hamilton Township. Because it wasn't Trenton High, it was Hamilton Township
Right.
High. They had to borrow a teacher from Trenton to act as my chaperone to go to Washington, D.C. They were very happy to see me get out of that school.
That's a great story, though. Did you have a good time?
Uh-huh.
Well, that's good.
I did have a good time.
No, that at least is a nice ending to that story, though.
Yeah.
A lot to go through, and wow, your mother sounds great. She sounded like she was quite a person.
She was.
Yeah.
She was. That she was.
No, that's great. Did sports play any part of your
I was not
Nice.
a good sports person. The neighborhood kids would have a neighborhood softball game. I couldn't hit, couldn't run, couldn't catch, so they made me scorekeeper.
What about any other extracurricular activities?
I tried playing basketball.
But any others outside of sports?
I was on the debating club.
Okay.
I was on the newspaper a couple of times on the radio because there was a Saturday morning program where they had kids from the different high schools come on. So I'd be on that Saturday morning program. And that was about it when it came. I tried playing hockey, but I could run, but they didn't have a girls' track team back then.
So you played field hockey?
Field hockey.
Okay.
I could run, so I played at that time they called it the wing, on the far outside.
Yeah.
Until one gal started swinging the hockey stick and hit me in the shins, and I said, wait a minute, you're supposed to be hitting the puck, not me. And I said, that's the end of playing hockey.
That was in your field hockey career.
That
huh?
was the end of my field hockey career. They had a group which I forgot now what they called it, but we would go on hikes. And
like an outing club.
It was the equivalent of that time to what the outdoor club was here
Okay.
in South Brunswick many, many, many years later. And we would go on hikes, walking, I remember one time we went on this long hike from the high school and where we lived all the way out to Crosswicks, the other side of 130.
Mm-hmm. Crosswicks Creek
Yeah.
and all that. Can you you have memories of your girlfriends, friends, and things like that? I mean, from that era, you had talked about some earlier friends. Do you have any memories of that?
Well, when we moved to Hamilton Township, then there was a new group of friends.
Okay.
But and I sort of lost contact with the people that I knew in Kingston.
So you were out in Hamilton. So after you graduated, so you went to Which college?
Douglas College.
So you went to Douglas. So
Correction, it was called NJC at that time.
okay, okay.
New Jersey College for Women.
So, okay, so you went up to Rutgers,
Mm-hmm.
and was there any memories of that? Anything that stands out from those days?
I liked NJC as it was back then. It has changed over the many years. Because, well, when I applied to college, I was accepted in several different colleges. But finances said, go where the money is. And I had a paid scholarship going to NJC.
Oh, okay.
Which took care of tuition. The only thing my parents had to take care of was room and board.
Okay.
Because I wanted to go to another college. And they looked at me and said, money. And so the deal was, do at least 1 year there. And if you really can't stand it, then we'll figure out what to do. But after the first year, I liked it because it was a chance. At that time, I think it taught the girls, well, we were young women then, the fact, independence,
Mm-hmm.
and to be self-sufficient. And of course, a lot of the gals back then, I think they were more looking for husbands than what they were looking for degrees. But my point was, you have to be able to take care of yourself.
And what was your degree?
Chemistry.
Chemistry.
Yeah.
Oh, a hard science.
Mm.
What was your first job as an adult? I mean, or after college, or did you end up doing or working anything with chemistry, or?
I got married when I was still in college.
Okay.
So my first job was taking care of baby number one. And then I realized that we needed more money. So I went back to the college and talked to the head of the department. And he was more of a friend and mentor, and so he was my teacher as I knew him, but he'd been promoted to become head of the chemistry department. And he said, can you type? I said, no. And he says, I need an assistant who knows me and a backup person who can back me up. But you've got to be able to type.
Okay.
And he said, but I don't need you until September. You got all summer to learn how to type. So I went to secretarial school and learned how to type. So my first job was acting as an assistant to the head of the chemistry department at Douglas.
Okay. So you worked at Douglas for the first job.
And then after that, and I stayed there for quite a while, then along came baby number 2. So I quit and started working part-time as an instructor there at Douglas.
Oh. Well, that's a change.
Well, because I could only work part-time. So I could be a part-time instructor, but I couldn't be a part-time assistant.
Yeah, but that was a nice move, though, right?
Yeah, it was a nice move. And then after the next couple of kids showed up, I wound up working down at Carter Wallace, Cranberry.
Okay, yeah.
And as a biochemist.
Oh, okay. So you
stayed there until I retired.
Oh, so that's actually that's a great story, because you got your degree,
Mm-hmm.
and then you couldn't use it at first, but then eventually you ended up using it as an instructor,
Mm-hmm.
and then you worked at Carter Wallace. It's a nice story. It's a very nice story. What a good story. Where did you live when you first got married?
In New Brunswick.
In New Brunswick, okay.
Yeah.
Whereabouts?
On Lee Avenue.
Okay.
We rented an apartment.
Okay. So, and then you were New Brunswick, and then
And
what was
we stayed in New Brunswick. We rented an apartment, a couple of apartments. Wound up buying a house in New Brunswick, outgrew the house, and then moved into South Brunswick, to where we are now, where I live now.
Did you raise your children in New Brunswick or South Brunswick?
Both.
Okay, both. All right.
The oldest one graduated from New Brunswick High School,
Okay.
but the younger ones all graduated from South Brunswick one.
And how many children?
Four.
4 children. Okay. Wow. What are their names?
Todd is the oldest, and Wayne, Karen, and Jerome.
Okay. So describe raising children here in South Brunswick.
Fun. When we first moved into South Brunswick, it was a new development, because I live in the Brunswick Acres development,
Okay.
and it was brand new.
This is the 50s.
We moved there in the 70s.
The 70s. Okay.
In the 70s, 71.
Okay.
And everybody knew everybody, and I remember having block parties, because there were only a few houses right there on Oakey Drive, the street that goes into the development.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody would see everybody kept an eye on everybody else's kids. So they say it takes a village to raise a child. Well, that was our village, and and they were our kids. And it was interesting. And then as the kids grew up, they started at Greenbrook School, and then went from Greenbrook to, they never went to Brunswick Acres School, because I'm trying to remember the times now, and Karen and Jerome were already in the middle school, Crossroads. And the question for Jerome would be, would he go into Brunswick Acres School or go into, I had an option for him. But at that time, Brunswick Acres School was open, as what they called the open planning, And I knew my youngest son, Jerome, and I said he did not need open planning. He needed a more structured, arrangement. So he never went to Brunswick Acres School. They went to Crossroads and then to the high school.
Okay.
And then it was playing chauffeur, taking kids all over from one meeting to another meeting, to Boy Scouts and to
normal suburban life.
Yeah.
Driving around.
I learned all the back roads of South Brunswick.
Now, are you a grandparent?
I'm a grandparent, and I'm a great-grandparent.
Oh, okay. So how many grandchildren? And what's the number?
Stop and count. There's a couple of extended families there, because my 2 married children, both married people who already had kids. So I have a couple. I don't like to use their term step-grandchildren, because I count them as mine.
Mm-hmm.
So Todd has 3 girls and a boy, and Karen has 2 boys and a girl. So that adds up to 7. And then when you get into great-grandchildren, Karen's stepdaughter, the daughter, has 1, 2, 3, she just had another one, 4 children. And I go over to Todd, his oldest daughter has 1, 2, and a step great-grandchild. And his youngest one has 2. And they're scattered all over the place. My daughter is in Florida with her extended family. The oldest son, which is Todd, is out in California with his extended family. One of his daughters now lives in Georgia with her two little ones.